business community has been battling with high lending rate, utility tariff, inflation, and the introduction of new taxes. Meanwhile, the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry at its National Dialogue series described the impact of Ghana's IMF Programme as crucial to the growth of businesses in the country.
The recent press release by the Ghana Statistical Service also reveals a 2.4% increase in inflation rate from 41.2% in April 2023 to 42.2% in May 2023. Additionally, the Labour Statistics Report released by the Ghana Statistical Service this year highlights approximately 1.76 million individuals were unemployed in the third quarter of 2022. The report further indicates that the transition from informal employment to unemployment is on average 5 times more prevalent than the transition from formal employment to unemployment. This shows that workers are being laid off and the intensity is greater in the informal sector, which employs a greater percentage of the total labor force. The formal sector, on the other hand, is cutting down on production due to costly modalities of laying of workers in the formal sector.
President for the Chamber, Clement Osei-Amoako, stressed on the need for government to cushion the sector in its quest to achieve macroeconomic stability.
The increased cost of doing business is also driving up inflation. These developments depict the hardship businesses are currently facing as a result of these measures. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, given the potential adverse consequences of these reforms on businesses, it is crucial that business operators are well informed about the IMF program and its implication for their operations. It is equally important for them to implement measures that can effectively mitigate the negative impact on our businesses. Hence, the Chamber has taken this initiative to organize this edition of the Chamber National Dialogue. Furthermore, the Chamber is earnestly committed to utilizing this dialogue as an advocacy platform to communicate the concerns of businesses to the government. In line with its mandate, the Chamber intends to actively pursue follow-ups with the government and relevant departments to ensure that these concerns are given urgent consideration, particularly during the upcoming mid-year budget review.
He maintained that government should address challenges with the independent power producers to save most businesses in the country.
With them, they are the independent power producers. And you know, the country cannot produce, have power on their own. So they are the one that augment and sell some to ECG. And what we have is that recently there have been some development that the government is owing them quite a long time, ECG, etc. And I believe that they also need to grow and pay part of their debt. And so, since they are the main source of power to ECG and co, I believe that the government will have to sit down with them and make sure that they settle them at least some percentage. Unfortunately for us, yesterday there was a meeting that there was some agreement that the government was going to pay some percentage to them to sustain the electricity projects that we have in this country. We expect that now that we have met the IMF conditionality and we are seeing growth about 4.2% in the first quarter, we want to make sure that the government really look at the tax issue again, widen the tax bracket and taking away some unnecessary tax out of it. We keep on saying COVID tax in this country and in the rest of the world. If COVID is no more existing and the government still wants to take COVID tax from the industry that have suffered, they really suffered and they are still taking COVID tax from them. The government think that they need revenue. What at all was their constraint? That they would rather take the COVID tax from the people that have suffered or the industry that have suffered over the years because of COVID. It means that you are multiplying their, the bad effects on them. And so we want the government to look at some of the nuisance tax that could be avoidable and widen it. So this mid-year review is to reassess what they have put in place, those that are not doing well, and listen to the private sector.
Speaking to Joy Business, Director at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Curtis said he's optimistic Ghana would have a good debt restructuring deal from China and other partners.
We are spending our hard-earned forex in areas that are not really relevant. They are just outcompeting local industries and depleting our forex. There should be some intervention in one way or the other. So yes, regulation is key, and also price stability. Once inflation is under control, it certainly has a knock-on effect on the exchange rate and vice versa.
There's been a lot of conversation with respect to our debt restructuring. Are you optimistic Ghana could get a good debt restructuring from China and other partners, a similar one to that of what we've seen with the Zambia deal?
Well, the external creditors have committed to ensuring debt restructuring. They have agreed. If not, they wouldn't have signed to that memorandum. I think there's a framework memorandum that they have signed on to. So I certainly expect some decency, some decent amount of restructuring to happen. But it's not just about the restructuring. Going forward, what do we do so we don't return to a similar situation in the next decade or two or more, or never at all, that we return to such a painful exercise?
Prof, in few days, we'll be seeing basically the mid-year budget review. I want to know what are some of your expectations, which sectors or areas you think government should this time focus on?
Well, revenue has been our major challenge. So with the coming on stream of the IMF funds, with the coming on stream of the new taxes that have been introduced, I would want to see how much revenue each of the different tax components are yielding. And if there's the need to sustain or continue or make them better, we need the numbers to know whether those new taxes are doing well. If not, what is the way forward? How do we streamline them to ensure that tax collection is efficient? I've seen digitalization processes. We want to see to what extent it is yielding the needed revenue. Then on the expenditure side, we've seen a lot of talks about proposals about cutting down spending. The numbers should show. We want to see how much we have done, how well we have done in terms of cutting down the expenditure, so we ensure fiscal consolidation. Having said all of that, what are the other things that we are doing to stimulate growth within the economy? What other new things are we going to do to support the private sector, make sure they create the enabling environment to absorb the needed job? Because we've seen under the IMF program that there's going to be some kind of limitation on wage increases, limitation on employment within the public sector. The private sector certainly has to step in. So they need to be supported in order to reduce unemployment in the country.
Should we have a supplementary budget?
Certainly there should be a supplementary budget because the IMF funds have come in, new taxes have come in. So a review of what we have now and how we are going to allocate those resources is important.
In some few weeks, there have been a lot of conversation with the IPPs going forward. I don't know, a quick one on that particular one.
Yeah, the IPPs, of course, in the program, they said we're not going to accumulate payables in the IMF program. I think there should be conscious effort to stick to that proposal, and the IPPs should be paid as and when the payments arise, so that we can continue to have the power on. I think that statement that they are going to cut power is not good for business, it's not good for economy, it's not, and those kinds of statements should not be made. Government should engage them and make sure they pay or accruals or whatever they owe them, so that we don't make such statement. It affects business confidence, it affects investor confidence.
Ghana in 2023 was ranked 118 among 119 economies in the ease of doing business according to the latest World Bank annual ratings. The rank of Ghana deteriorated to 118 in 2019 from 114 in 2018.